Tonight on the program, we're going to spend these next 30 minutes talking about the rule of law and the absence thereof, and what the Bible tells us that you do under such circumstances and such cases as the absence of the rule of law. The first thing that I want to do is I want to share with you a passage of Scripture from the book of Luke. And in the passage of Scripture, the Bible tells us something about meting out, which means measuring out. It is a principle, and a principle is something that's very vital that you understand, and it's very important that whenever we make plans for our lives, whatever it may be, to defend ourselves or to be proactive, whatever the case may be, how we deal with people in life, how we make life work for us is always going to be a balanced approach. We have to keep our minds set forever that whatever we measure out, sooner or later is going to be measured back to us again in the same measure that we measured it out. It is called the balance of life. It is called the balancing of things. It is the order which has been divinely created by God Himself in the universe. Everything in the universe is balanced. The oxygen levels, the carbon dioxide levels, all of it perfectly balanced. The distance of the sun from the earth, and so forth and so on. All of life consists upon a perfect, delicate balance. The Bible tells us in the book of Proverbs that a just weight, which means a balanced weight, is a delight unto the Lord. But it tells us, on the other hand, that an unjust weight, that is out of balance, is not only a problem, but the Bible says it is actually an abomination. For those of you that's watched the program over the years, then you know that I've told you on many different occasions what the 4 degrees of sin are. It's number 1, the sinner, which we all are, and then there is the sinner that is evil. Evil is the desire to hurt. Then there is the sinner that is wicked. Wicked means twisted. You no longer know the difference between right and wrong. It's generally the children that evil parents raise. And then there is the abomination. It is the lowest rung on the ladder. It is as low as you can go. And the Bible tells us that an unbalanced weight is an abomination. If it was that the universe was to become out of balance, then you would see why God said it was an abomination, because we would all cease to live at that very moment. Whenever relationships becomes tilted in one direction or the other, it usually spells the end of it. Whenever the law is tilted in one degree or the other, it usually brings chaos. A just weight is God's delight. And this thing called measuring, as I'll read to you in a minute, the Bible using the word to mete out, M-E-T-E, to mete it out, to measure it out. This act is a principle. Principles are so vitally important because they do not change. You cannot alter them. They consider nothing as to their working order. A principle is gravity. If a white, black, yellow, brown, purple, green, orange person jumps off of a building, gravity demands he's going down, period. It does not take into account anything else. It is more than just a fact. It is a principle. You cannot get around it. And we're dealing with the principle of sowing and reaping, that whatsoever you sow, that ye shall also reap. It's a principle. If you are producing or planting corn, if you plant a corn seed, the principle comes into play. The corn seed is going to produce corn and only corn. If the ground will grow it, the seed will produce what it is, and it will never produce anything else. Those are principles. And what I want to share with you tonight, with some of the chaos, some of the evil that's going on in our country right now, I want you to see how that is based upon principles, these principles of the Bible. The Bible tells us in the book of Luke, chapter 6, and verse 38, it says, "Give, and it shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down and shaken together, and running over shall men give into your bosom. For with the same measure that ye mete withal, it shall be measured to you again." The principle that I just laid down. All of life depending upon receiving and giving, giving and receiving. If the receiver stops giving, soon enough the receiver will run out. If the giver stops giving, sooner or later the giver will give out. If you have water that is only coming in and there is no outlet, the water stagnates, becomes polluted, becomes deadly. If you have air that does not have a means to move in and move out, if it only moves in, never moves out, that air becomes stagnant, mold infected, and it'll kill you. That's how life is. You can't just breathe in because oxygen benefits you. You have to exhale also. And if you just breathe in and you never exhale, the same thing's going to happen to you should you decide not to breathe at all. Life is give and take. That's what every business operates on. That's the principle that every business functions by, survives by, lives by, is that it provides for people a necessity that they have or a luxury that they want, and the people provides to the business the finances and the money to make a living producing the product plus reproducing more. It is all based upon this simple principle. What you sow is what you reap. Give and ye shall receive. It is principles. Now, whenever we deal with that pertaining to law, whenever we pertain to that pertaining to justice, then all the principles are still in place. For society to work, for society to properly function, there has to be punishment of those that do wrong. If you reward those that do wrong, you only guarantee more wrong being done. That's what we're facing now. Now, I want to show you that something that I've shared with you going back 2 years ago. I told you that the problem in America right now was that there is no law. That those that systemically ruled are the ones that has systemically ruled from the beginning, basically, of this country. It is a party that is known that calls themselves Democrats. If you will just do a minor research of history, you will see that the Democrats has ruled systemically through the government and through the law. You have seen that they have ruled from the beginning of this country. That they have been behind every act of chaos. That they have been behind every murder of every president. Every time the chaos comes, it comes by those that are corrupt, but not just corrupt. Those who are rewarded for being corrupt and who continues their corruption and is blessed for doing so. We find that there is a body politic today who is able to do, and as I said, always has been, able to do whatever they want to do and pay no price for it. Yet if people from the other side or anyone that disagrees with this Democratic Party, they are prosecuted, they are chased, they are punished, they are imprisoned. While those of the highest sitting positions of power can flagrantly break the same rules and not even be searched out concerning the matter. We find one thing that's very troubling. One of the speakers and one of the hosts for one of the shows that's on Fox News, his name is Tucker Carlson, just discovered and found out that the DOJ, the FBI, the Departments of Justice, the NSA, National Security Agency, has been capturing his emails. Now, of course, we know that this is against the law. It is against the law for American citizens to be spied on by their government. It is against the law. Mr. Carlson is a television host for Fox News. Therefore, those that are in power, but not just those that sits in the White House. You see, those that's been in the White House has corrupted now the entire law enforcement agencies. The FBI is corrupt. We've already seen that. The DOJ is corrupt. We've already seen that. the mayors, those that sit in places of power, they are corrupt. Now, Mr. Carlson, who is a threat to them, the information of which he gives out, actually factual and truthful, is a threat to them. So it's not just them slandering his name, but it is them now using law enforcement to attack him still. His emails. Look into his personal life and his personal communications with people. Which means, of course, if they can do it and get by with it with him, then of course they can do it and get by with any of us with doing it. I'm going to play you a little clip of Mr. Carlson when he first came out after he had learned from, a whistleblower inside the intelligence agency who informed him it was taking place. Of course, they denied that it was happening until the facts came out the next week and proved that they were doing it, and then they finally admitted that they had did it. The NSA spying on an American citizen. Here's what Tucker Carlson had to say.
But the question remains, did the Biden administration read my personal emails? That's the question that we asked directly to NSA officials when we spoke to them about 20 minutes ago in a very heated conversation. Did you read my emails? And again, they refused to say. Again and again. And then they refused even to explain why they couldn't answer that simple question. We can't tell you, and we won't tell you why we can't tell you. My emails. And the message was clear. We can do whatever we want. We can read your personal texts. We can read your personal emails. We can send veiled threats your way to brush you back if we don't like your politics. We can do anything. We're our own country. And there's literally nothing you can do about it. We're in charge. You're not. Orwellian does not begin to describe the experience. It was like living in China. But we should get used to it. Now that the Biden administration has classified tens of millions of patriotic Americans, the kind who served in the military and fly flags in front of their homes, as potential domestic terrorists, white supremacist saboteurs, we're going to see a whole lot more of this kind of thing.
If you go back many, many years ago, television programs that I did long ago while George Bush was in office, there was a big stink over the Patriot Act that was being put together, where that we had the ability, if Americans was in communication with known terrorists, that you could listen in on them. You could spy on them. There was a big stink. Democrats fighting it tooth and nail. But of course, it made sense. But I said way back then, I said the problem is where it has to be done now to save our lives. When there is an administration that comes in that then deems you to be the terrorist, then the law will already be on the books for them to do it. Now, Tucker Carlson has no communications with terrorists, and there was none manifested. They were spying on him, and now it is out, and the NSA has even acknowledged that they did get his text messages. Now, when and where did all of this begin? You see, there is a plant that is sown, that has produced the chaos and the disorder that we know today. It came from a man by the name of Barack Obama. Mr. Obama promised to reform, to change, to transform this country. Now, what he did for 8 solid years was an abomination. What he did for 8 solid years was nothing at all for the country, nothing at all for race relationships. He caused tremendous racial division and did it on purpose. What he did was he spent his entire 8 years transforming the United States of America. Now, it's an ABC thing. To transform a country, you will have to do it by its law enforcement agencies and its military. The law enforcement agencies and the military are the ones that will protect you while you destroy everything else. So they have to be on your side. The law enforcement first, so that many things can be done that's illegal for everybody else, but it's not for you. That way they can get all their stuff done, passed, and people in jail. The military then has to be brought into the matter, because at some point there is going to be an insurrection. When the people see and the people know without a shadow of a doubt, they're coming after us. They are labeling us terrorists. They are calling us enemies. They are talking about creating camps where we, who supported Donald Trump, has to go and be taught how to rethink. They're talking about imprisoning us, taking us off of the internet, taking us off of television, taking us off of the radio, demanding we be removed from society. They said that, and they are doing that. Well, at some point, there is going to be some form of resistance to any government who is now over a free people exercising that type of lordship. That is why the military has to be brought in. That is why now the military, the generals and all, has been changed and is being changed to be hard leftists. Is now they're working on the military, because the law enforcement agencies is rock solid behind them, which means there is no rule of law whatsoever. As Tucker Carlson said, if they can read his personal emails, they can read all of our emails. And any of us is a threat to them whatsoever, or any of us that proclaims who and what we are, who we voted for, any of us who preaches a conservative message or even a biblical message. We are subject now to having our emails, our text, and everything else spied on and us imprisoned. Which brings us to a very strange thing that's happened here just within the last day or so. Congressmen of the United States of America, the Congress went to the jail in Washington, D.C., where these people who was in this supposed insurrection of January the 6th, who had no arms, no guns, who had no boards, no sticks, who was attacking nobody, who walked through open doors, police officers opened for them, who went into the Senate chambers with police officers having conversation with, they have been put in jail. And the strange thing about it now is those that have been put in jail for what happened January the 6th, they've not been seen, they've not been heard from. But what has been being told concerning them is that they're having their brains beat out of their heads. One's skull cracked, he was beat so bad. Until now, he's blind in one of his eyes. Others being locked down in solitary confinement for 22 hours a day. A woman that is being locked down except for 5 hours a week, who when they let her out keeps her chained up. Congressmen for the United States of America went to see if these were political prisoners or not. And they went to the jail, Congress, in D.C., the ones who funds those jails. Republican congressmen went to see if the stories are true. They were not allowed into the jail. Congressmen, lawmakers, was not allowed into the jails to speak to or see those people of whom I just told you about. They were told by officers that they were trespassing on what they fund, and they are elected officials to oversee the well-being of the United States citizen. But they were not allowed to go in. That fact alone begs a question to be asked that must be answered. What are you hiding? Obviously and evidently, what has been told about those Trump supporters in jail in D.C. is true. And not even the Congress is allowed to go in and see or check on them. Reckon under what authority they're operating to call U.S. congressmen trespassers as they enter into a facility they fund. And again, the fact that they will not let them be seen speaks volumes to the truth. Now, nothing's being done to anybody. The DOJ is not investigating it. The FBI is not investigating it. If those people's in there getting their skulls cracked and living under solitary confinement for 22 and 24 hours a day and being chained up like animals and dogs, then where is the law? There is not a rule of law. And nothing more can testify to that than the Vice President herself. When asked by Stephen Colbert, which is supposed to be a comedian, about all of the riots that took place before the election, she promised that they were needful and necessary. That those riots that you saw on the streets, Molotov cocktails thrown in police officers' cars, buildings and businesses burned down, people beat, stomped in the middle of the street, pulled out of their automobiles and beat. She said it was necessary, and she assured us with a smile on her face that they would not stop after the election, that they would continue because they were necessary. This is the Vice President of the United States of America.
How important is it for these protests to continue?
It's critically important, and I'm going to tell you something. That's right. But they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop, and they're not. This is a movement. I'm telling you, they're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels. That they're not going to let up, and they should not, and we should not.
This is the Vice President of the United States of America saying that these protesters should not let up and that they are not going to let up, not during, before, or after the election. The Vice President of the United States. Now, this is very clear, is it not? That there is no rule of law in this country, because the only rule of law is the rule of law, balance. And that is, what is wrong for one is wrong for all. You can't have vice presidents and presidents of a country okaying the burning and looting and killing of citizens and destroying their livelihood, while on the other hand, taking people who had no arms, no guns, attacked nobody, and beating their skulls in D.C. jails. What does it mean that by what measure you mete it out, it shall be meted to you again? It is the only way justice can be performed. At some point, the other side has to understand that we cannot get into office and play sweet, nice, and kind. What you have to do, Mr. Lawmaker, Mr. Republican Congressman, Senator, what you have to do is you have to, at a given time, do what the adversary is doing. You have to suspend a rule of law and order that is already suspended itself. And if you don't, sooner or later, there is going to be an uprising in this country. Because there are those who know and understand this rule. That with what degree they are measuring or meting something out to you, the only way to possibly balance it is to give the same thing back to them. I'm not advocating anything at all. I'm simply telling you the law of balance. If somebody is throwing 1,000 pounds on your scale, there is not but one possible means to equalize the situation. That is, you must throw 1,000 pounds back on your side of the scale. And like Jesus said, with what measure it's meted out, it must be meted back unto them again. My point is the laws of physics, nature, the very rule of law itself, the law of balance, tells us that we're not in for good days, and it assures us that sooner or later somebody is going to throw the 1,000 pounds back at the ones that's been throwing it at us.
say there's work for you to do. So I took my master's hand and joined the Christian band. Now I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. I left my home and kindred, bound for the promised land. With the grace of God upon me and my Bible in my hand. In distant lands I've trod, crying, sinner, come to God. Hey, I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. Well, I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. Oh, yes, I am. I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. I promised him that I'd serve him till I died. Now I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. Savior, I'll meet him with a smile, for he healed my wounded spirit and he owned me as a child. Around the throne of grace, he prepared my soul a place. Now I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. Yeah, I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. Oh, yes, I am. I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. See, I promised him that I'd serve him till I died. On the battlefield